like that. It's a good foundation for the New Testament. Well, y'all pray for me.
Okay. You're hurting today, ain't you?
I am.
Bless your heart. There's nothing you
Just
take
lay
hit
out on the table. We won't.
Yeah. I ordered,
If you
I
lay
don't know
low
how
enough, you'll
it's
be
gonna-
under the line of the camera.
I don't know how it's gonna work. I have on order and it was expensive too. I did some research on mattress toppers and what would be good for someone who has compression fractures and stuff like that. And they suggested a latex topper instead of a memory foam. So I have a 3-inch latex topper coming, probably be here this week. My son helped me order it, but it was expensive.
I bet.
So, but I don't weigh very much, so maybe it'll act like a complete mattress for me. I don't think I'll really get down in, because my mattress that I have is like 22 years old, but it still looks new, because
Yeah.
I've had memory toppers
Mhm.
on it most of that time.
Yeah.
But my memory topper now has a dent in it where
Yeah.
my hiney, I guess, rests all, because I guess I sleep in the same spot
Yeah.
all the time. So I don't know if that's gonna help or not,
I hope it does.
but
Well, our new mattress that we just got this year, we had gotten a new mattress a few years ago, and it was one of those foam, kind of a memory foam kind of thing, and it was good for a while. But like you said, it like one of the commercials said, my memory foam mattress has too good a memory. You can still see, it remembers what I looked like. But our mattress now, it has the coils in it again, and it seems to do better. We're enjoying it. But
well,
I remember you used to buy mattresses for $99, and now you can go to the store and they said, we've got them marked $500 off regular price. And I said, $500? Regular price shouldn't be $500.
also what I read is the latex lasts longer than the memory foam.
Yeah.
So I might get 15 years out of it. It's a
Yeah.
possibility on, well, I won't be around 15 years, so
you might
maybe
be.
I'm
You
safe
never know.
there.
It might just do wonders for you. Yeah, well, we had to get a new one. We researched and they said that the best one for our age and everything was puffy, which we
Think-
never even heard of.
The thing to do, Barbara, is when you die, just tell them to cut a slice of it and put it in a casket, and you could keep using it.
Yeah.
I get my full
Just
Get
tell
your
them,
money
money's
Yeah.
worth out of it.
just tell them, say, now the warranty runs out in about 8 more years, so you're gonna have to get me back up and put a new one in. All right, now that we've solved that problem. Matthew, the 25th chapter. We're winding down in Matthew, but we're getting closer and closer. It's been kind of funny. Me and Liz started back watching some of the episodes of The Chosen, and it seems like the last 2 ones that we've watched have perfectly coincided with our lesson. So today's lesson is the 25th chapter, and the lesson in our book picks up kind of in the middle of it, and on the 31st verse. But the first 30 verses have 2 fairly well-known stories or parables in them, and the idea is that Jesus is talking to the disciples, and he's trying to teach them the importance of being faithful to what God has set before you to do, and to be prepared and to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. We talked about that a little last week. That if so many times you hear people say, well, if I had won $1 million, I'd do this and this and this. And, if you're going to be changing a lot of stuff, then you should already be, doing some of that, or as much as you can. But we need to be doing what God wants us to do. We need to be looking for his coming, expecting his coming, because as last week's lesson said, it'll be like a thief in the night. We won't know when it's going to happen. And this week's lesson starts off, it says, it's a story about another wedding feast. It said there were 10 virgins. The way they did weddings in those days was a little weird. It wasn't like, okay, it's going to start at 7 o'clock and the mothers will be seated at 6:45, and all this kind of stuff. They just said, we're going to get married today. And they said, when? They said, well, when the groom decides to show up. And he would have his little party and all this kind of stuff. And finally he'd get to a certain point and he said, okay, well, let's go do this thing. And you just had to be waiting, And that's what these virgins were doing. They were waiting for the groom to go pick up the bride and come to the wedding feast. But there wasn't a schedule. It wasn't going to be at a particular time. It was whenever he decided to do it. And 5 of the virgins showed up, and they had their lamps, their little oil lamps. I don't know if you've ever seen those things, but they kind of look like the Aladdin. Some of them look like kind of the Aladdin lamps. They have just a wick that sticks out and a bowl full of olive oil. Some of them are actually open. You can actually see the oil. But they would sit there and burn those things. But 5 of them brought their lamps burning, but they also bought a little bottle of extra oil. Because they said, we don't know when he's coming. We need to be prepared, whether it's a short time or if it's a long time. So they brought extra oil. Well, he delayed, and finally everybody got tired and they all kind of took a nap. Then finally the guy come running down the road announcing, here they're coming, they're on their way, they'll be here in a little bit. It woke everybody up, so that all the virgins that were waiting there got up and they started getting everything ready, and they'd retrim those of you who's ever used a kerosene lantern, every once in a while you have to trim the wick off or it dims down because it gets too much char on it. You trim the wick off a little bit and get it going, get it good and bright, looking good. And 5 that didn't bring any extra oil said, we're almost out of oil. We need more oil. And they looked at the others, they said, well, give us part of what y'all brought. And they said, no, we need this. You need to go buy some more oil. So they left to go get more oil. Meantime, the groom shows up and they fall in line. The 5 that were ready fall in line with everybody, and they go into the banquet hall and they close the doors. Well, the other 5, they went to the market and they bought oil, and they came back, and when they got back, the doors were closed, and they started knocking on the door and said, hey, wait a minute, let us in. We're supposed to be in there. We had to go get oil. And they weren't allowed in. And what we need to look at that is you can't wait. So many people think, well, I got plenty of time to get my life right with God. I'll wait till the last minute. I'll do one of them deathbed things, Well, you don't always know you're going to have that opportunity. You don't ever know what situation it's going to be. You don't know what your future holds. You have to trust the Lord, but the first thing you got to do is be prepared. And these 5 wise virgins, as it referred to them, they were prepared in that not only did they bring their lamp, they brought extra oil just in case. If the groom had come right on, they probably wouldn't have, none of them needed any extra oil. They'd have been fine. But he didn't. He took his time and he come later, and they had to add the extra oil, and 5 of them didn't have any extra oil to add. So they said, okay, well, we'll run right quick and get some. But by the time they got it, it was too late. They had waited too late to prepare. And that's kind of what we need to glean from that particular story. Then he moved straight into another story. He said there was a man who owned a wealthy man that had several servants, and he was going to go off on a long trip, and he called 3 of his servants, and one of them he gave 5 talents. And he said, take charge of these 5 talents and use them while I'm gone. And one he gave 2 talents, and then a third one he gave only 1 talent. We don't all receive the same thing from God. We can look all around us and we can see that there are people that have more wealth, more talent, more ability, more, there's all kinds of different things. But God gives us what we need to do what he's asked us to do. If he hasn't asked you to do $1 million job, he's probably not going to give you $1 million. But if he's asked you to do a a smaller job, he's going to give you what you need to do that smaller job. But that job is just as important. When I think back to growing up, you think about all the different positions in a church. You know, you got the pastor, you got the music people, and you got the piano players and organists, and you got the choir, and you've got the Sunday school teachers and the Sunday school director, and all these different people. They're very important jobs, and you think, well, they're teaching the people, they're leading people. But the people that stick out in my mind right at the top of the list, not necessarily the top, but they're in the top 10, are those guys or women, whoever it happens to be, that when whoever walks through the front door, they're the first one that greets them and says, welcome, good to see y'all, glad you came, come on in, have a seat. I remember when we was at Flint, there was 3 or 4 guys that you could count on. They was going to be there every Sunday morning. And it didn't matter who came in that door, they shook their hand, they welcomed them, they smiled. And if they looked like they didn't know where they was going, they made sure they got them to where they were supposed to go. And those people stick out in my mind as being very important. They did a very important job. They were the first face of the church that people saw, the first impression. And the reason I guess that sticks out in my mind and makes so much difference to me is through my life of traveling and living in different states and traveling on vacations and stuff, I've been to a lot of churches that I walked into, sit through the whole service, got up and walked out of, and never had the first person speak to me. And I remember when I first moved to Louisiana, before Liz was able to even move down there yet, I was sleeping on my friend's den floor. And Sunday came and I said, well, I guess I need to find me a church. So I drove down the road just a little ways and I saw Luling Baptist Church. And I said, that looked like a nice church. And as it turned out, it was Sunday evening. I don't know what had happened Sunday morning or where, I can't even remember that. But in their defense, it was also their VBS commencement evening. But I walked in and I walked very slowly in. I sit about halfway down on the aisle, sit there for the whole service, watched everything, got up and slowly walked out. Never had the first person speak to me. Of course, there was a lot of parents and stuff there that they were dealing with, but nobody, and I'm talking about there was probably 150, 200 people there, and nobody spoke to me, not anything, not even waved their hand or nothing. And I said, that's unusual, that's odd. It shouldn't be anybody that comes to your church that doesn't get greeted in some way. You know, if there's a lot of them, then you need to work faster and you need to make sure you get to everybody. And for that purpose, you'll probably notice if you pay much attention to me every Sunday morning, I try to speak to everybody in the sanctuary. You know, I don't come speak to y'all because I've been talking to y'all for an hour already by the time we get in and you're tired of me. But, you know, when your grandson comes in, I come speak to him. When somebody else comes in, I try to go speak to them. I don't want anybody to come in here and not have somebody speak to them and welcome them to the church. I think that's very important. I think that's something that we all want. And I've been to other churches. I know Liz and I took a vacation with our friends in Louisiana when we were living over there, and we took 2-week vacation together, which was odd to find a couple that we could spend 2 weeks, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with and not want to kill each other. But they were very special friends and they still are. But in the middle of that 2 weeks, we were in Tallahassee, Florida, and we went to church in Tallahassee. And their church was under renovation, their sanctuary, so they were meeting down in the basement. So we had someone that stood there and directed us down to the basement, but nobody ever actually spoke to us or welcomed us. They just said, meeting down in the basement, you know. And it was a big church. It was probably 200 or 300 people there or more. So it's very possible, I guess, when you get in a big church like that, that you might not know that this person's a visitor or that person's a visitor. So I think that, again, that's a good reason to make sure that we try to speak to everybody. You know, at this point in my life, there's a lot of people I walk up to and I said, "Hello, I'm Daddy Bain. I may have met you, but if I have, I'm sorry, I've forgotten who you are." Because there are people, you know, that come, like especially on Mother's Day and different occasions, they come that I've probably met before, but it might have been a year or two ago that I met them. And sometimes they don't register in my little mind. My hard drive's full, I think. But we need to make sure that
Mine's crashed.
we I understand that too. We need to understand, you know, to do what we're supposed to be doing. And when this man came and he gave this 5 talents to this first person, you know, 5 talents. A talent was the largest denomination of that they used for money in that day. And I've heard different values, but some of them say it could have been worth up to 3,000 denarii, and a denarii is considered an average person's 1-day wage. So a talent, 3,000 days, that's a lot. We gave the first one 5 talents. That's a lot of money, you know. Well, this guy that received the 5 talents, he said, "Okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to work with it. And I'm going to do what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to carry on my master's business. I'm going to do this." And he was able to double that money over a period of time until he had 10 talents. Well, the other one, he gave 2 talents. He said, "Well, I don't have as much to work with," but he said, "It's still a lot of money. I'm still going to work with it. I'm still going to do something. And I'm going to still accomplish some things." So he did, and he worked hard and diligently, and he was able also to double his money. So even though one guy earned 5,000, well, he had 5,000 to start with, so he had just doubled his money. Well, the second one had 2,000, but he also doubled his money. So really, they both worked very diligently. They both were, in my opinion, equally successful because they were able to double what they had been given. Well, the third one, he took his 1 talent and buried it in a hole in the ground and covered it up where it'd be safe. Well, a time came that the master came back, and he approached the man that he'd given 5 talents to, and he said, "What have you done? How are things going?" He said, "Well, master, I took the 5 talents you gave me, and I have worked and invested and did different things." And he said, "And now I have 10 talents. He said, "You've done well. Enter into your full retirement with benefits. Whatever all that, he said, enter into the joys of your Lord." In other words, you've done well. Now it's time for you to be rewarded for all your hard work. He brought the one that had given 2 talents, and he said, "Here, master, you gave me 2 talents, and I was able to increase that by 2 talents. And he said, "Again, very good work. You've done a great job. You've done exactly what you were supposed to be doing. So enter into the joys of your master," as is. Well, they come to the third one. And the third one, by this time, he's thinking, "Well, maybe I might not have made the right decision." He said, "But I think there's a way out of this." So he said, "Well, master, I knew you was kind of a harsh person, that sometimes you reap where you didn't sow, and you gathered where you had not planted." And he said, I was afraid that I might lose your money, so I just took it and buried it in the ground and kept it safe. So here it is, just exactly what you gave me." So basically what he was saying is, I didn't do anything for you. I didn't do what you asked me to do. I did not work for you, but it's really your fault. How many times have we tried to blame God for not doing what we're supposed to be doing? "Well, God, I would have done it, but last time I did it, you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. Or this happened, or that happened. Or God, why did you let that happen?" Yeah. It's so easy. As he said a little earlier, he said to pass the buck, to blame somebody else, to find out the reason I didn't do this is because it's somebody else's fault. You know, it started in the Garden of Eden. God said, what have you done? The man said, oh, the woman gave it to me, it's her fault. And then the woman said, yeah, but God, you put it right here, it's your fault. You know, so everybody wants to find out a reason why it ain't their fault. And this man said, I was afraid of you, and I was afraid that if I messed up, that you'd be disappointed in me, so at least here's your money. And the master said, well, if you really felt that way about me, then why didn't you put it in the bank, and then at least I would have gotten some interest. He said, but you just wasted it, you hid it. And there are so many people that God has given abilities or talents or wisdom or knowledge or something, and they're not doing anything with it. They're just letting it go away. I first started at the church at Scottsboro, where I ended up, where I was at when I met Liz. She didn't go to that church, but her sisters did. But I was a friend of mine. I went over there, and I remember I had just moved in over there, and I was kind of walking around on a Sunday afternoon at one of the little shopping strips. Walked past a Payless shoe store, and I heard a voice that sounded very familiar. And I walked in, and it was a fellow I graduated high school with, was manager of that store. And we were in chorus together, and he was actually in our wedding, sang in our wedding. So I walked in there, and I got to talking with him, and I said I knew his father was a preacher, so I figured he knew a good church. He probably was involved in a church, and found out later that basically he wasn't involved in a church, but he knew a good church. And I asked him, I said, where do you recommend to go to church? And he said, you need to go to Ridgedale. And he told me where it was, and it was like all the way across town. It's just like I told somebody the other day, it seems like all my life God has put me at a church that I had to pass 10 Baptist churches to get to it. I live across the street from Westmead and well, my mind just went. 2 big Baptist churches right there, and I got to go right past them, past 2, 3 more. But God has always put me somewhere. I said, well, okay, I'll try it. Well, I didn't realize it, but he'd already talked to some people, and he said, you got a guy that's going to be coming to your church, and he can probably help you with your music program. So I led choir practice Wednesday night before I joined the church. They had done gotten the word on me, so I got started there and doing that. But we don't ever know what God's going to call us to do or where He's going to put us, but He always has something He wants us to do, and so we have to be ready, and we have to be willing to use our talents. But when I was leading that choir, you know, when you have your choir, and I had been raised at Flint, and Flint was, I found out, the oddball, because our adult choir was made up of, they was probably out of 20 or 30 people that was up there in the adult choir, probably half of them were members of quartets. So all 4 parts were very well represented in our choir, and we had probably at any given Sunday, we had 4 or 5 people that could sit down and play the piano, and were willing to. Well, I ended up there at Scottsboro, and I got maybe one person that can sing a little alto, and everybody else sings sopranos at different levels, and some people just sing monotone. They just got one note, but they do it very well, so they stick with it. And I was thinking, oh Lord. And then I'd lead the congregation, and there was one particular voice that stuck out. I could hear a little bit every once in a while, but most of the time she would sit there and she wouldn't sing at all. Somebody told me, they said, you need to talk to the preacher's wife. Said, she's got a beautiful voice. And she used to sing in the choir, and now she doesn't anymore. So I walked over to her and I said, why are you not singing in my choir? She said, well, I used to. And she said, and one Sunday I had somebody walk up to me and they said, well, I wished you would pipe it down a little bit. I can't ever hear anybody but you up there in that choir. So she said, okay. So I stopped singing. I said, so you was trying to please them, not God. And she said, well, no, not really. I said, well, that's kind of what it sounds like. I said, I'll see you Wednesday night at choir practice. And she started back and started. But she had a beautiful voice. And she allowed somebody to discourage her from using it. She allowed somebody to stop her from using that talent. And I always enjoy seeing someone that wants to do something. When one of the girls, when Avery decides she wants to play something for the church, I love that. I want to see somebody use what talent, whatever it is. We used to have talent nights at the church in Augusta because people love to do that. We'd have people sing. We didn't have very many that would sing, but we had a few that would sing. I've told y'all before, we had this one guy, he loved to play his harmonica, and we let him play the harmonica. It didn't matter what he played. The last time I can remember him playing it, it took two people to get him up there, and they leaned him against the communion table, like, propping him up against the wall. And he'd sit against that communion table and played a song on his harmonica.
My dad played harmonica in church.
Yeah. And man, I love that. And then we have other people say, well, I can't sing, but I want to read you a poem. And I said, yeah, do that. But God has given you something. God has put something in your repertoire. Whatever it might be, you need to make sure that you use it. You need to make sure that you give it back to Him and let Him multiply it, let Him use it, let Him reach others with it. Because when the time comes when life is over and we become before the Lord, our salvation has already been attained. It's already been paid for. So we won't be judged whether we're saved or not. What we'll be judged with is, what did you do with what God gave you? How many opportunities did God give you that you passed up or that you didn't use? How many times did you stand for God? How many times did you meet the call? And I think we need to, it doesn't matter who we are or how hard we work, it's probably going to be a lot of things that we find out we had opportunities that we missed. But we need to try to make the best of as many of them as we can in any way that we can. I've kind of tried to condition myself, and it seems here recently, I'll be sleeping real good, and sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll just wake up. And when I wake up, in a couple minutes, somebody's name comes in my head. I said, where'd that come from? I said, well, ain't nobody here but me and God, and Liz is asleep. So I said, it must have come from God. So I said, well, God, I don't know why this person's name came into my head, but whatever's going on with them, bless them, give them courage, give them strength and knowledge and wisdom to how to handle it. And a lot of times I find out that when I've responded to that I find out that maybe that person was going through something. God called Philip and He said, I want you to go out in the wilderness, go down this road. Because He knew that the man from Ethiopia was already on his way down the road. He sent Philip out there for that purpose. He told him when God had appeared to Peter and showed him, let the cloth down, and told him to go to the Cornelius's house. Well, Cornelius already kind of knew he was coming. He'd already knew he was coming. Even you go back to the Old Testament, God calling Moses, go lead my people out of Egypt. He said, but I can't talk. And finally, He said, well, your brother can talk, and he's already on his way to meet you. Aaron probably left before the bush ever started burning, because God already knew where this was going. And that's the thing we need to keep in mind. It doesn't matter what we face in our life, whether it's what's going on in our church or what's going on in our life or what's going on somewhere else. God already knows. He knows already what's happening, and he already knows what the solution is. And whatever it is, if we follow his guidance, it's going to work out to be the best. It may not work out to be the way we like. It may not be something we're comfortable with or something that we would have chosen. But many times when God has led me into something that scared me, once I gave in and started doing what he's asked me to do, it's always worked out to be something that was a blessing. But we should never take what God has given us, the opportunity that God has given us, the talent that God may have put in our life, and so whatever it may be. And your talent can be a lot of different things. A lot of people, they think talent, they say, well, talent, that's people that ends up on American Idol. They've got talent. Well, America's got talent. Talent can be anything. It may just be a talent of being able to talk to people. You know, you meet people all the time, you see little kids running around and their parents say, well, they ain't ever met a stranger, they can talk to anybody. Well, that's a special gift because there are so many people that can't talk to nobody. My brother's told from the pulpit several times, when he was young, he didn't talk to too many people. And then all of a sudden, God gave him something to say, and now we can't shut him up. But whatever God gives you, whatever it is, whatever you enjoy doing, God can use it. You see my brother use magic. Everybody thinks magic's evil. No, it's part of the lamb service. It's part of the children's message. We used to use martial arts. He would have a youth revival or something, and we'd do an exhibition. We'd get a bunch of people show up. He said, okay, while you're here, let me tell you about Jesus. We went all over the place doing different things like that. I have seen every kind of thing in the world used. Went to Decatur Stadium one night. They was talking about it. I forgot what they call the guys, but it was this team of guys, big muscled up guys, and they would break bats and tear phone books in half, and they did about 30 or 45 minutes of that kind of stuff, and then somebody got up and preached. But they filled that stadium up with people that wanted to see them break them bats and tear them phone books, but then they started telling them about Jesus. We need to do whatever we can do. Whatever talent God has given us, whatever ability God has put in our lives, we need to find a way to use that to reach other people. Sometimes it's just the experiences we've been through. There are going to be people that you're going to be able to walk up to and say, I know exactly how you feel because I've been there, that I won't be able to relate to at all. You know, we never were able to have children, so there are people that I can talk to and say, yeah, I know what it's like to want to have children and can't figure out why God wouldn't give you children when your wife is probably the best candidate for Mother of the Year that you've ever known, and she was never given any children. But then he turns me around and he says, but look at all the kids that she's been able to minister to because she didn't have her attention focused right here. She's looking like this now. So we don't ever know what's happening in our life, but God gives us something and we need to use it even if we don't know how we're going to use it. We need to make it available to him so that he can take it and multiply it. But don't bury it in the ground. That doesn't do anybody any good. All right. Keep our church in your prayers. Keep our pastor in your prayers as he speaks to us today. Some of you realize his personality and how he deals with things or doesn't deal with things sometimes. And keep him particularly in your prayer because when he gets a problem on his mind, it haunts him 24 hours a day. Don't forget the new book, Arbor. Get one to take to Randy. Well, let's pray and we'll go. Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for this another opportunity to be here and study your word and to learn, God, what it is that you want us to do. Help us, God, to always use what you have made available to us, what you have made us stewards over. Our time, our talents, our income, our wealth, our abilities, whatever they may be, great or small, God. You want us to turn them over to you and use them for you, and to multiply those talents and multiply the effect of those talents by using them for you. God, help us to always be willing to do that. Be with our church, Lord, as we go look at the future and see where we should go from here in this place. God, help us to have your guidance and your leadership, and help us to know what you want us to do. Give us peace in our hearts, Lord, about your will. It's in Christ's name. Amen.